And so with that, I would like to begin a panel discussion of the various actions, the cross-cutting needs, the challenges, actions. We have identified fisheries, carbon budget verification, forecasting as major areas where biogeochemical Argo can have an impact. But if audience members have other suggestions, areas that we could take advantage, where the system could make major contributions, we would love to hear about them. I think that really to sustain, to enable the long-term operation of the system that is needed in many areas, we really have to strengthen these connections to societal relevance. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can move over to the actual discussion with the panelists. Panel members are Lisa Clow from NSF, Laura Lorenzoni from NASA, Dave Legler from NOAA, Maria Hood from the G7 European office. Katie Hill will be on in the later session, I believe, from the, but not this one, from the G7 Future of Seas and Ocean Initiative Coordination Center. Andrea Fassbender from NOAA, Oscar Schofield from Rutgers, and myself from MBARI. And with that, we can move over to the panel discussion. And I'll begin the panel discussion by asking the panelists to address a basic question about what action items they see are essential to fully leverage BGC Argo in their fields. If they have comments on additional actions that we need to really make this system useful for society. And if anyone wants to volunteer on that, feel free, raise your hand and we can kick you off. Oh my gosh.
And this is Laura. I raised my hand, so I actually figured out how to raise my hand, but I'm not sure you can see it.
Yes, I can see you. Yeah, thank you, Laura.
Yeah, no, so I'll be very brief, and I'll start off by saying that throughout the years, BGC Argo has really demonstrated the usefulness to connect what we see as remote measurements from satellites and airborne sensors to the ocean, and especially that three-dimensional structure of the ocean. And while NASA maybe at some point limited itself to really focusing on the satellite fleet, that deeper understanding of what is happening within the ocean, which can only be achieved by in situ measurements, and Argo has such a broadly distributed set of measurements, and it's becoming so much more comprehensive with the addition of biogeochemical sensors. That really is adding to the picture, and it's also helping us exploit our satellite data a lot more than we previously did, because our great scientists have developed new algorithms to really retrieve ocean properties from satellites, and so it really is providing us information on the whole system. Because Argo has demonstrated such a fantastic usefulness to connect with those remote measurements, we're seeing more and more of our scientists coming to propose to the agency using BGC Argo, and we really welcome that. And we're going to continue soliciting that merger of in situ measurements with satellite measurements, because we really feel that provides the best information on the Earth system. Now, I think we still need a little bit more work in really trying to connect our scientific measurements to society. And I'd really love to see, walk into a supermarket and have near the fishery section an Argo float, and have people really connect what is to have those measurements for their food, for their food security, for their weather, for all the applications that we take for granted and not really understand what the critical piece that science plays. And so I think I really look forward to continuing to work towards that. We have a fantastic set of application folks within NASA that are also working towards making sure that the science that we make is really within the reach, and it really is embraced and ingrained into the everyday lives of folks. Because I think that is really what helps drive a sustained suite of ocean measurement. And thank you, everybody, for really, this has been tremendous, and you've put a lot of work into it. So I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Any other comments? Or we have a set of questions from the audience we could move to, if not.
So Ken, several of us have our hands raised in the participants panel. I'm not sure you could see that.
I can't see that. My gosh, I bet I go. Dave, if you are ready, go for it.
Well, I'm going to defer to Maria and Oscar, who had their hands raised before me. So I'm going to defer to them, please.
Okay. Oscar.
Yeah, I think I just want to build on this workshop. I think the big first step is to build that global array, and GO-BGC complemented with Argo is a great, amazing first step for global system. I think moving forward, we want to go where those a lot of the fish and people are, and what should be the design for the continental shelves where humans live. GO-BGC will be critical for that. And given that when you move into the continental shelves, integrated data systems, because the shelf systems have a very diverse data things, and how can we imagine that it'll be a seamless transition of what we're seeing and what we're learning between those systems is exciting. And I wish I was a young oceanographer.
Yeah. Okay, I cannot see the hand raised thing.
Well, Ken, can I just go ahead and jump in, as David already introduced me?
Yeah. Maria, go ahead.
Yeah, so on behalf of the G7 Future of the Seas and Oceans Initiative, we're very proud to have co-hosted this workshop and to see so much enthusiasm and engagement in the community. But as many people have said here today during the high level speeches, implementing and sustaining the BGC array will go beyond the G7 countries. And this is really one of the major challenges going forward. I think that the best way to secure commitments from any investor is to assure them that their investments are contributing to an internationally agreed and managed program of investment, and then to demonstrate what the return on that investment might look like. So in terms of the ability to address global issues such as carbon and climate, but also local blue economy issues of coastal health and management of living marine resources, as many people have mentioned, as Oscar just said, moving towards the coastal zone where the human interactions in the fisheries are. So this is all part of the whole stakeholder engagement process, not only asking what data and information are needed, but then demonstrating the use and the application of those data coming out of the system to solve problems. And that's what encourages new investment.
I would just follow up on that with one comment. I was, again, really struck by the talk from Srinivasa Kumar in India with the potential fishing zones. They've actually done things like studies to look at the fuel savings from vessels that use the potential fishing zones versus those that do not use the information. And they're much more effective in terms of using less carbon, less fuel to per ton of fish caught. So there's a huge opportunity in terms of social sciences, economics, to really start to look at the the blue economy impact of some of these things. Dave Legler, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Ken. I agree with my previous panelist comments. I think short term, in addition to those, I would also think that we also have to place some emphasis on just getting the data system to be ready to enable the sharing of data, and having all 6 sensors and making sure that the data system is robust enough to deal with all of that data will, I think, open up the doors to allow people to look at the data, examine them, and utilize the data. We saw great success, as we mentioned in several of our presentations today, about just open access to that data is so key to making sure that it's useful. I also, just building on, sort of Maria's and Oscar's comments about the opportunities, particularly in the coastal space, I think we have a new opportunity in the coming decade, if not sooner, to really open up the dialogue between the sort of global ocean community and the coastal ocean community in these important regions. And we have a real opportunity to engage those people that you were talking about, Ken, about the fishermen and others who can use more of this information in ways that we've never really dreamt of before, I think, in the oceans community. So I think it's a real opportunity. Thanks.
A question that came from the audience. The vision is to reach a fully developed global array by 2030, which will require significant collaboration across nations. In terms of array planning, float deployments, data management, how can we secure commitments from international partners, including less wealthy nations, to participate in BGC Argo? Do we envision, I mean, other than sort of self-assembly, is there an active way to entrain more international participation? Maria?
Well, yes, I mean, I think we've already mentioned this briefly. We need a strong user base to ensure sustained investment and support from governments in the global governance arena. And many of those member states and users will be from less resource nations. They won't be nations that will be deploying BGC Argo floats or helping to crack the data management system. But this really offers a lot of new opportunities for developing targeted science and management tools using the BGC Argo data assimilated with all of the other available data, especially in the coastal zones, for really modeling and forecasting a new range of issues that are important to coastal nations and small island developing states as well. So this type of demonstration and application to local needs is really essential for the longevity of the program. And these partnerships offer a real open door for BGC Argo program to develop.
Lisa, you have your hand up?
Yeah. Now I'll lower it. So thanks. And I really want to amplify all the comments made, but let me call out, that open data piece really is huge, right? So that commitment to here is what we're getting in pretty near real time, if you're willing to get that high level, not quite quality control check to the nth degree yet. But the other piece that really, almost all the nations of the world signed up to different rules of engagement for the floats, right? So I think that really, the governance system really is very important to recognize. And as we're having these great conversations about what I call yes and, right? So let's celebrate what we're doing with the floats. There is still work to be done, but we're all already saying, well, gosh, and we really want to get into the coastal regions and all of that. And that will require likely new vehicles. And we're going to need to have worldwide governance to understand those. So I think our true commitment with the floats on the technology front, on the data front, on the capacity building front, and on the governance front has put us in a really good spot. But we do want to try and build and leverage to get to the yes and. There are challenges ahead of us when we turn to maybe gliders and getting to international agreements on those fronts. And I think that the scientists and the technologists are doing great because of the commitment to open access for those resources as well. That's really important to build those international partnerships and to get us agreeing to maybe do business a little bit differently than normal. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Any other comments? No other hands up. Another question from the audience. BGC Argo increased deployments is a fantastic international success and a step change for our improved understanding of the ocean. However, BGC Argo alone does not answer give us all the answers we need. I think that was a message that came through as a cross-cutting issue that we need a multi-platform approach. And so panel, what is your vision for integrating all of these networks for the decades to come? And I will interject that I often hear a comment, does this mean we don't need ships, or does this mean we don't need satellites, or what? And so, full disclosure, I do not believe that. I believe in an integrated system, but if you have any comments, would love, Oscar, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be multi-platform. The value of the data is going to require lots of efforts and calibration validation. So even in the open ocean, those ships and moorings are going to be critical to bring out the maximum value out of satellites. We need the in situ observations to provide validation. And then I think the governance, when you move into economic exclusive zones, you might use the framework of Goose, where you actually do have agencies and countries organized for governance. And it's more, if every country puts in surface vehicles and gliders, that's great. But it's having that open data policy tied to it that's critical, that allows the unification to happen. And I think compared to when I came up, this has actually come so far in terms of sharing data that I think it's a possibility.
Dave?
Sure, just adding on to Oscar's comments, I think in terms of like integrated design, I think within the call for the UN decade, there are some ideas now being circulated about how to approach the question of an integrated observing system design that reflects the contributions of satellites, about all the different types of sensors and the platforms on which they ride. And so I think it's going to take us some time to figure that out, but there's some really good proposals, I think, being, circulated, and efforts being thought about how to do this now. And it's not just all those observing platforms, but it's also how to integrate it then in the context of what the modeling perspectives can bring to the table, because there too, you're adding a lot of knowledge and information. And maybe it's just keep going. It's beyond models. It could be different types of intelligence or approaches, different types of knowledge that can combine all of these types of pieces of information into a knowledge network. So I think there are some really attractive and exciting potential for that. So I think I think it was Oscar who said, wow, it's such a great time to be a young oceanographer. There's so much potential in the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to be a really exciting time.
Laura, you have your hand up.
Thank you, and I'll build on what Oscar and David just said. Is not just the data accessibility, but also that interoperability and integrating it into the modeling, but also making it, as Dr. Lubchenko mentioned in her talk, really not necessarily, I don't want to use the fit for purpose slang, but it's something that is easy to pull for everybody. So certainly we're going to need every single element of the observing system that we have and that we can still imagine. Not one single platform is going to be enough to really understand our ocean. It is a big problem, as she said, that we cannot ignore and we really have to pay attention to. But it's putting those data in a way that is they're easy to use to the public, because that's what really is going to translate into the value of those data. And so it's going to be an end-to-end process. And I agree with David that there's going to be work that we're still going to have to do to really make sure that we not only can seamlessly integrate those data across all those different platforms into those models, but also make it accessible. And it's not just pulling data from a server, it's actually generating products that are meaningful to the people that they're not going to have servers everywhere to process these data. And so it has to be something that pretty much anyone can generate those products that really are meaningful for their everyday lives and translating to those important applications that show that return on investment that Maria mentioned.
Mm-hmm. I love to come back to the Incoy's India example, but they generate products for a broad range of community in terms of potential fishing zones. They translate into, I believe, 11 or 12 different languages, to make these available. And so not just for science, but in terms of products for, you know, just like the Weather Channel, right? So yeah. Question, comment, several questions again about data, but you know, so in this integrated system with satellites, ships, and floats, I mean, we really are entering the big data era. If we weren't already, we definitely are going to be there now. And Hervé Claustra comments that we really need to develop stronger interaction with groups developing deep learning AI techniques. Is this something that we let evolve sort of naturally, the community, or is there a way to accelerate this kind of you know, use of the data that's really beyond, you know, beyond what my generation of oceanography did, where we had all our data on one piece of yellow paper? You know, how do we go into this new world of big data, deep learning? Lisa.
Sure. And I'm going to sort of throw three things out there, a couple of which are contradictory. But I think that we really, you know, there are efforts, right? So NSF funded one of the first AI institutes was focused on climate change, right? So I think that is huge. And we should be doing that. And I know the EU efforts with the blue cloud and all kinds of things, really, I think we're, the funding agencies are moving into space. And of course, NASA and NOAA have been leaders in the open data and the sharing piece. But I will say, I want to throw now sort of the other two. So I play a little bit, as you guys know, with the US's Ocean Observing Initiative. And boy, if all the big for-profit companies aren't really interested in the data for the data's sake, these huge data sets really do have a whole lot of power in and of themselves, not just for us to understand the ocean, which obviously should be first and foremost, but I think also on the, you know, we should be recognizing that economic piece on what our huge data sets can provide to understanding artificial intelligence as well. But let me throw the final one. You know, I'm pretty sure everyone on this call is very up on FAIR principles, so findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, but maybe not everyone is quite as familiar with CARE that comes out of the indigenous groups. And I just want to remind everyone, especially as we're going more into coastal areas, that CARE, I have to write that one down, it's not memorized yet. So C is for collective benefits, A is for authority to control, R is for responsibility, and E is for ethics. So I do want to sort of remind everyone that, you know, yes, there's huge power in several directions of these big datas, and having climate change pair up with AI and big data. But remember, we have people involved in all of these components too. So let's not lose sight of the responsibility and the ethics components. Thanks.
Yeah, no, totally get that. So kind of a follow-up question for you, Lisa. In my mind, NSF in the past has had initiatives that require, you know, I think the coastal initiative that required sort of a socio-economic component and a science component. I start to think this really is an area where, you know, we could start to make some hay. Is there, you know, will there be future opportunities at agencies that build this really cross-disciplinary, and I mean, getting out of science into, you know, economics and ethics and, you know, everything? Are there going to be opportunities?
Yes, 100%. I think, again, blue economy is a worldwide buy-in, and economy necessarily has the people component of it. Again, most familiar with the US pieces. You mentioned our fairly new efforts at NSF with coastlines and people. But I think, NOAA for years has had their investment in sea grants. So I think, there are networks of networks out there that do the coastal and the people really well. And I think we will all embrace that. UN Decade is a great framing and reminder that it's about the people, and knowledge to action absolutely implies actors. And so that's the people. Yes, it's here to stay. It's been here maybe all along. And again, I think sea grants have been in play in the US for at least 50 years. And I'm sure there are international efforts that Maria can draw on and share as well. But yep, it's really important to get the knowledge, and we need new knowledge, but the knowledge to action piece it brings us into different ethical, responsible, and other components. Thanks.
So there are a suite of questions from the audience that relate back to the data stream. How can we best incorporate sustained data stream from floats into ocean resource management? And or we need a data integration structure that is far larger and more nimble than we currently have, has to be able to supply data and products. And I think that especially products, if someone who, a fisheries research manager is not going to want a profile of nitrate in the North Pacific. They want a product. The comment is that there are large commercial efforts. I mean, we think I mentioned Weather Channel. So, NOAA, NASA collect huge amounts of weather data. It gets provided commercially. Is there, do we, again, is that an area we let evolve, sort of at its own pace, or do we try to accelerate such, commercial efforts and, access to the data that the research community provides a model, commercial takes it up? Anyone? David, you have your hand up.
Sure. I think those are good questions, Ken. I see in agencies like ours, which do have a policy obligation, where observational products, I like that word, right? That's important. And even assessments about the changes that the ocean are undergoing are a critical underpinning of where we see regional fisheries management decisions are using that information to make, fundamental monthly decisions on how much fisheries activities they will allow. What is their fish take allowed? So I think that will likely continue. I think the commercial sector, I would guess that's going to come into play for other needs. And I think that's certainly a ripe area that will certainly be enabled by BGC Argo and other similar measurements. I suspect so.
Mm-hmm. Maria, you have your hand up?
Yeah, in the G7, in the recently announced G7 Ocean Navigation Plan for the decade, there are 3 spotlight activities for the decade that impinge on this. One is, and it's not just a decade program, it's the development of digital twins of the ocean. And that will really be a motivator and a federator of a framework for all of these different pieces to come together, from the observations to the big data, artificial intelligence, marine learning. And of course, those things help to make data products on a regular and operational basis. But when you talk about having information that goes from knowledge to action, and you need, the products that a policymaker needs is information, and as David mentioned, assessments. And this is one of the other spotlight activities for the decade, is developing a global ocean monitoring indicator framework, so that we can start to look at what indicators are out there, how you bring in the human dimension, and making a framework that assists all of this big data to come into coherent global agreements about how you communicate what's going on in the ocean to policymakers in a regular way.
Mhm. Laura, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a very quick comment from NASA side. There's been the recognition that industry really is a strong partner because they've developed in parallel real capacity to deal, for instance, with these big data or supply high resolution commercial satellite data. So there really is a complementarity between what our federal agencies are doing and what industry is doing. And so from NASA side, there's been especially from the big data side, a strong collaboration with, for instance, Google or Amazon platforms that are really paving the way in terms of data serving, data storage, data anything. And so I foresee, and I'm really hoping that we can continue to walk hand in hand with those partners. And in all honesty, they're coming up with brilliant things that it would be silly not to build a stronger partnership across both government and private industry worldwide. So I really do hope that is one of the ways that we're going to move forward in terms of data serving, and all kind of things. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's see. A comment, and following up on all of the data, is a comment from my experience helping people use satellite data. The process of getting data used really requires a people presence. It's just not enough for us to throw data on a server. We need people available to help understand and access the data. And that really implies, a data system, active presence in the data system, which in Argo sort of doesn't exist, I would say. And so I don't know, any comments, Oscar?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with the comments about the people, because, once you're experienced, you can use the automated systems. And one thing about Argo is right now it's very automated, yet there was a lot of community back and forth in the beginning. And so I think that especially if we want to help developing nations and other areas that are sort of leapfrogging into this world, making sure we have the training programs, but they can't just fully be automated. And hopefully in a non-COVID world, we might even be face-to-face at some point.
Mm-hmm. I will add, there's a comment from Tanya Maurer related to this, and which is that we really do need a people presence. A reality is that the data system people are always seems willing to help, but there's often not an open channel to really know how to get to them. When the question does reach them, they really add a lot of value, but it's like you need a help desk sort of thing in any case.
Just add on that one with some current buzzwords, Ken. So we are fond in the coastal resilience sort of world talking about the importance of boundary spanners, right? And it can be boundary spanning individuals, it can be boundary spanning organizations. Sometimes locally, it's like, and I will be gender neutral in a minute, but often referred to as, well, we need our science guy. And it doesn't have to be a guy, but that there is that major translation component that is critical. So I 100% agree with the comments. And again, we're tending to frame things in this boundary spanning. So it can be an individual or an organization, but it's critical to have people who walk in two worlds to really have those translation impacts and be the game changers.
Mm-hmm. I will just stay for one more question or comment on data, and it's a comment about a limitation to AI development is the absence of training data sets, and you have to start thinking about how the data is archived and how you put together a system that really would be suitable for AI development. I know that in the SOCOM's been mentioned a number of times, and in the multi-platform world, we have both the ship-based data, which in some sense you can view as a training data set for the float-based data when you're trying to develop new products. But that is, again, a key argument, I think, for having a multi-platform system. We very often use the satellite data as a training, as a validation training data set for the float chlorophyll, as another example, right? And so there are really having this merged data system that we'd really like to see, I think, is going to provide benefits in ways that, when you write your list, there will always be one couple more things, reasons to do it. So I think that's a real key thing, to have these multiple platforms, multiple approaches. Comment about, when we see the maps, there is not much in the Arctic, in the true Arctic. We get floats into the Nordic seas, but the Beaufort and Chukchi seas tend to be kind of a gap in the system. Any comments, Dave, in particular, on Argo moving into higher latitudes in the Arctic?
We continue just about Argo. So we continue to work that challenge. Is there, as you know, it's a difficult environment for lots of reasons. We are having we do deploy some air deployable Argo floats that do get into the Arctic for part of the year. For BGC Argo, I think there are some incredibly important fisheries regions in the Beaufort Chukchi Sea region, and those fisheries, turns out, are moving around quite a bit in response to the changing sea ice cover and changing ocean properties. It would be really helpful to have some measurements that BGC Argo can provide. I don't know if we can overcome all the technical challenges associated in that part of the world, but yeah, we need to keep working on it. I agree, it's a good point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, areas with permanent ice cover makes it hard for the floats to communicate. And then there are just some technological issues, but yeah, I think in some sense, the Arctic is the low-hanging fruit, in the sense of a target with a high impact, and it's the high difficult, target, because, it's just a super hard place to work. So yeah, no. Anyway, any other comments? Lisa, you have a long background in that area.
Yeah, I think there are some other tools, the gliders, and obviously the AUVs are certainly, I think we're seeing some progress in those components. Underwater comms is really hard, so when you can't bust through the ice, that's a challenge. On the other hand, I don't want the ice to be gone. So I think we might want to really look to some of those other technologies to fill in the gaps at this point. And I think the gliders and the AUVs are really doing some awesome things in ice covered waters.
Mm-hmm. So question, speaking of gliders, it seems like a global glider network is sort of a next step to connect BGC Argo to the coast. Should it be co-developed? Is there a coordinated effort, and should it somehow be co-developed with BGC Argo to essentially enable global coverage of biogeochemistry? Oscar, I'm going to ask you to comment on that.
Yeah, surprisingly, I have opinions. So no, I do think that the global glider community has come together nicely, and it's maturing across several different themes. But I do think that if you look at it, there's a great opportunity to accelerate sensor development that can go between platforms. Ensuring that the data comes out in a form that's similar to BioArgo's. So if BioArgo is hooked up to the global telecommunication system or something like that, the gliders can follow. And so I think there's a lot of cross-fertilization now, but I think it can be accelerated, and there's a lot to be learned from each other. But I think we're making progress.
Maria?
Yes, at the international level, of course, David can probably tell you more about this. In the Ocean Observations Panel for Physics and Climate, they have been working on for a number of years trying to develop a boundary system observing strategy. And this is an integrated strategy, multidisciplinary, to look at how you would go about instrumenting boundary systems to tell you about not just physics and climate, but also biology and ecosystems. It's very complicated because it requires integrated system design with multiple platforms. No two boundary systems are alike. So, I mean, and it is a key area when you look at the models and you say, where can I make the biggest impact by getting in situ observations? It's in the boundary system. So this is it's a holy grail of what we're trying to do on a lot of things. And of course, those boundary systems will rely heavily on colliders as well.
Okay. Sorry, I'm manipulating questions here. So a comment, are there any existing or planned repositories for community provided open source software products, such as some of both the software products or the actual products themselves, you know, global carbon budgets and so on? How do we, you know, so the data is used to produce, you know, both how do we produce things like carbon budgets, A, but then B, where do we provide community access to them for the people that want to look at a fully gridded carbon budget, for example? Any comments on how we should treat this in terms of both software and storage? I know Argo, you know, essentially provides links to things like this, to gridded products and so on. Maria?
Yeah. So I don't know if we're allowed to do this, but I think we could call on our co-panelist, Andy Watson, who could probably be the person best placed to answer that. Of course, we do work in the oceanographic community. We do work with the Global Carbon Project to look at integrated carbon products, but Andy would be able to tell you more if he's still with us.
And Andy, if you wanted to activate your microphone, that would be great. Andy.
Yes, can you just briefly ask the question again, Ken?
It was a question about whether are there repositories for software products for carbon budgets, but actual carbon budgets themselves. If people produce, assimilate data in a model, make a global carbon budget, how do we provide access to that for the community?
The community is kind of, to some extent, the community is kind of self-organizing, and it is beginning to try to do that. And you know, currently the main there are GLODAP and there's SOCAT, which you probably know about. You know, those are the major repositories of ship-based and GoShip style data. But they're really, you know, I am thinking that with all the data that's coming from BioArgo, there really needs to be some kind of similar activity that is that would be synthesizing the BioArgo observations and what they tell us about the carbon cycle. And that is something that I don't think really exists at the present, but it's clearly something that would be great to have in the relatively near future as the array gets rolled out.
So thank you, Andy. That is great. I know people are thinking about your last comment of you know, essentially sort of GLODAP for BGC Argo, and then I think, you know, integrating everything really is a next step. We're down to 5 minutes left, and I wonder if the panelists would like to give us, just to go around the group and give us any last comments about next steps, areas of low-hanging fruit, or agency actions. Any last words? And I'm going to start on my screen. That would have Lisa up first.
Sure. I mean, it's been a great couple weeks, right? You know, and I loved actually, Ken, the screenshots that you chose to incorporate in your wrap up, because they were all focused on that action exclamation point, right? Like, here's the really cool things, but here's what we're also doing well. My agency is certainly in the business of accepting proposals. So, you know, I think your highlight of the workshop that you're having to encourage new users at the end of the month is exciting. But I certainly heard a fair amount of, well, other kinds of users, and how might we actually get to products, but also expand the user base. And that is thinking outside the box to get us to solutions, as we heard from several of our keynote speakers. So we're in the business of accepting proposals, and really interested in being in solution space in ways maybe NSF has not been before. So capture this energy and enthusiasm, and let's get to the dynamic next steps. Thanks.
Dave, last word?
Sure. Well, words would be appropriate. I too was listening to many of the sessions, and I learned a lot. It was quite amazing. So I really do appreciate the effort put into organizing workshops. I was really energized by them. I hope all the participants were. I think in my mind, some words from our earlier speakers today resonated in my mind. Jane Luchico talked about the majesty and awe of the ocean, and as I think we've heard throughout the series of workshops, the opportunity and the transformational nature of GO-BGC. And so we too at NOAA are invested in this space, and we're very excited about that future. And just point to one of the other comments earlier today about the importance of empowering and supporting our early career or our next generation of oceanographers, and not just oceanographers, marine scientists more widely. I think, you know, we have this opportunity to think differently. I know it's easy to compare BGC Argo to Argo, but we're in a different space and a different time, and I think there's a great opportunity to make those bridges to action, as we've been talking about, and talking to the resource managers and other users about the potential. And so we're really excited about that space, and like Lisa, we're investing, and we'll be doing more in that space. Look for more to come. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. Laura.
Our time is nearly up, but I do echo the same sentiments as our partner agencies. We just selected a bunch of carbon cycle science proposals, and more than half of them, at least from the ocean side, have integrated in them the SoCal floats. So we're really seeing a surge of people really, you know, scientists utilizing that. And so it really is going to be exciting. What I really look forward to is hearing and kind of crystallizing all the great ideas that we've heard throughout the workshop, because it is a collective community, and they've, you know, everybody's come together in great numbers for both sections, which is fantastic. And we really need everybody's input to make this a truly global ocean observing initiative. And so I think there's fantastic ideas, and I really look forward to being able to act on them once we have them kind of just synthesized. And so thank you to the note takers, and thank you, Andrea and Ken and Oscar and everybody, because this has been truly absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Maria.
Yes, thank you. So support for the BGC Argo was really one of the first activities for coordinated joint action of the G7 FSOI. And the outcomes of this workshop will really mark the new and next phase for G7 support for BGC Argo. We'll be drawing on the workshop outcomes that have been informed through the participation of hundreds of experts around the world. working to draw in and engage and inspire non-G7 countries, and focusing really on these development issues, the cross-cutting issues, and the opportunities and challenges that have been listed here.
Okay. Thank you, Maria. Oscar, last word?
Yeah, just a quick thought. I think we're going to change the definition of an oceanographer. And I think what the net result of this will be, we'll have as many landlocked oceanographers at community colleges, R1 universities, teaching universities, being able to go to sea 365 days a year. And I think that's going to be a great thing for our planet.
I totally second that. I think early career, you know, to get over the hurdle of staging your whole cruise, it provides a data resource and ability, and a huge opportunity for people to extend this into the application action area, right? I mean, this is, you know, low-hanging fruit for the system. Well, so I would like to, the last comment I'm going to make is that I would really want to acknowledge the effort of the core Argo program that has run for, you know, decades now, and really laid the groundwork for what we are hoping to do with a global BGC Argo network. Without Argo, without NOAA's long-term support, you know, this is all, I mean, we wouldn't have been here. So I really would like to say that. And so second comment that we are working on a workshop statement, and we'll circulate it to the all of the attendees and participants for outside comment. And so that will be happening shortly. And with that, I think we will conclude this session 2 minutes over time. I just want to thank the speakers and panelists, as well as the audience, for their participation in today's session. All of the agencies in the US and internationally that have contributed to the development of this system. I think this really shows the foresight of a lot of agencies and people really, I don't know, sticking their necks out to move to a next level. So I think that's really been great. And so finally, all of the recorded sessions and pre-recorded talks will continue to be available at the GO-BGC, go-bgc.org website. If you go to events, there'll be a link, and this will continue to be a resource into the future. And look for the workshop statement as the draft workshop statement that will be coming out. And with that, I'd like to give a final thanks to everyone, and wish you all a good day. Thank you.